Hello everyone and welcome to the first whole of community webinar for 2019. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If you can't, could you please put something in the chat window. My name is Sylvia Michael and I'll be hosting today's meeting. For those of you who have not attended this webinar series before, and as a reminder to those who have, please turn your microphones and videos off for the duration unless you're presenting. If you have a question or are having any technical problems, please type your question or issue into the chat window and we will try to respond to it as soon as we can. Those of you who are presenting, thank you very much for your time. It is much appreciated. As each of you present, I will introduce you and ask you to unmute your microphone. Some of you have slides. Those of you who don't will just be speaking to the slide as it appears. Everything today, including the webinar and the chat items, is being recorded and will be available on the website for your use as needed. There is also a survey link at the end of the presentation that I would encourage you to please complete to help us to improve this webinar series. So let's get started. This is the agenda for today's webinar and you would all have received that with your invitation. Firstly, I'd like to remind you what the aims of this and the whole of the community webinars in the series are, and that is that they're driven by the 10-year Australian Earth Observation Community Plan to encourage and to inform the wider Earth observation community. So this slide just gives you a description of that plan. I'm sure many of you have seen that before. The plan recognises there are 5 priority areas of action. Firstly, connection and coordination. Secondly, securing Australia's role in the international Earth observation community. Thirdly, infrastructure and people. Fourthly, access to Earth observation data and services. And lastly, generating value. These 5 priority areas of action are supported by a steering committee and 5 working groups. In our December webinar, I reported that the steering committee would focus on finalising the business plan and seeking funding to support the activities of the steering committee and of the working groups. As an update to that meeting, I can report that by the end of next month, March, we expect to have completed the business plan, commenced the transition from our current informal structure to an incorporated association and registered Australian body. We will have re-engaged with the working groups and we will have commenced our funding meetings. And also we're going to commence a series of educational webinars. This last point is an activity of Working Group 3, that is infrastructure and people. Working Group 3's lead is Arco Lucier, who is interested in commencing this educational series with presentations on modern data cubes. If anybody would like to contribute to these webinars, Arco has given me permission for you to contact him directly and his email address is on this slide. Also in December, I mentioned that the Earth Observation 2020 Forum was in progress, the organisation of that, and I'd like to ask Karen Joyce to provide an update on that. Karen, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a bit quiet. Can you speak a bit louder?
Yeah, okay. I will shout. How'd that?
That's better, thanks.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks for your time, everyone, today. I'm presenting this on behalf of quite a lot of people, actually. I guess the background is that next year, 2020, in September or October, we'll be running the first Earth Observation Forum. And so the whole thing is being directed and led primarily by Stuart Finn and myself, Renee Bartolo from ERIS up in the Northern Territory, and Glenn Campbell from USQ are also involved in co-directing. And then we have a steering committee of about 18 or so pulling together various aspects of it. So it's a pretty big job to bring together a new forum where we're targeting the region and probably around 300 to 400 people to attend. And I guess the key thing for this forum that we want is that this is not a conference. It's not a case of multiple sessions or tracks doing standard technical sessions where there's a speaker and everyone else is passively absorbing. We've changed it around quite a lot, and there'll be a lot of interaction and networking time throughout the forum, and that's really a big focus of ours, to make sure that it's something that it's really interactive and is a place for people to contribute their ideas, their thoughts, and really share, so we can advance the discipline of Earth observation within Australia and the greater region as well. So if you want to have a look at the dates there, we've got 2 provisional dates. Will be held in Brizzy, so at the Convention Exhibition Centre. At the moment, it's either the 14th to 18th of September, or it may be the 28th of September to the 1st of October. So just working around exactly what those dates are, so we don't have clashes with other events around that time as well. So pencil in those dates, and we'll be providing updates as bits and pieces come to hand, and when we lock those dates in as well. And we have just launched the website that's up the top of that page there as well. Thanks, Sylvia.
Thanks very much, Karen. So moving on then to the other parts of the webinar, we have the current status and engagement of a number of groups, as you can see on this slide. And the first is the Australian Space Agency. So if I could ask Jo Andrews to unmute yourself and give us a presentation on Australia's Space Agency, that would be great. Thanks, Jo. Are you there? I can't see Jo's name in the participant list. So we might just move on. That's right, Jo's not there, yes? Okay, we'll just move on then. So there's now a Digital Earth Australia program update, and Claire Krause, are you there to present on that?
Yes, I am here.
Thank you very much, Claire.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. So we've been very busy in Digital Earth Australia in the last few months. 2 weeks ago, we hosted an Open Data Cube meeting where we were working with some of our collaborators overseas to address and improve the Open Data Cube code base. There were 3 projects that were worked on during that, which are now actually moving forward as sort of areas of interest for people. So the first project that was looked at was combining different satellite sensors, so Sentinel-1, Sentinel-2 and Landsat, to get a better indication of where water is and how water is changing through time. That was a very successful and interesting project, and there's some interesting results coming out of that in terms of trying to develop a Sentinel-1 based classifier for water, which will allow us obviously to see through cloud and get through some of that limitation of the spectral satellites. There was some other work that was done looking at land cover classifications and trying to develop some fundamental data sets to allow us to go through and use the basic decision tree to classify land cover. In addition to that particular workshop, we had another workshop last week where we invited some of our collaborators in the water space to come and work with us, looking at how we can use remote sensing to understand where water is in the landscape and how it's being used. Those particular projects that were discussed at that workshop are being used by some of our federal and state government agencies to help them with the work that they have, that they're legislated to do to understand how water is being used and make sure that it's being used appropriately. In addition to that, we've got a few new interesting products that are coming out of the development teams. There's a new product on urban classification, which allows us to understand how Australia's urban areas are changing through time and where they're changing. That particular product is now in prototype stage, but is looking very promising for and will be released at some point in the not too distant future as a product that will allow us to understand urban change in our cities through time. There's some other very interesting work going on looking at extraction of shorelines and coastal erosion and using remote sensing to understand how Australia's coastlines are changing through time. So there's just a few snapshots of what's happening within Digital Earth Australia, and there's a lot of really interesting product development happening at the moment in collaboration with our federal stakeholders to help them understand and support their decision making and to use the products that we're producing, for example, monitoring wetlands, to fulfill their obligations for reporting and monitoring of those particular assets. That was all I had. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thanks. Before you go, Claire, just,
yes.
So those projects are documented on your website, I assume?
Yes, some of them are fairly new, and so they're documented as things in progress. And if you are after any further information, I can provide that to you. But yeah, I have shared things that are still in progress, so they're not actually released as products yet, just some of the things that are coming through that will be released in the upcoming months.
Great. Thanks very much, Claire.
Thank you.
So our next presentation is Digital Earth Australia Industry Consultation from Eva Rodriguez. Eva, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Eva, we can.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Sylvia. So yeah, I guess I'll just give an update of where we are with respect to the Digital Earth Australia Industry Consultation, just to give a bit of an overview for those that haven't been across this work. Frontier SI is working with Geoscience Australia on the development of an industry strategy. This is about making sure that the Australian industry and end users can really make the best use of Earth observation and Earth observation through the Digital Earth Australia engine as well. We started this work in August 2018, and we had a consultation up to December 2018 last year. Outcomes of that have been, so we run 5 national workshops, we had 4 webinars, some of them providing information on how to access, use, visualize data on DEA. If you haven't been part of that, I welcome you to go to the website there on screen, frontiersi.com.au, opportunities/DEA. We've got the slide deck that we use there, and there are links to the videos, so that can give you some idea of how to use DEA. You haven't been across that yet. In terms of the strategy, the draft strategy, almost final report has been written, and this has been also validated and run through the DEA team at Geoscience Australia. At the moment, we are finalizing bits and pieces of that report, and the expectation is that that will be publicly released the next month. An important bit of that is that last year, before the end of the year, we released a communication piece around the consultation and where things were at, and we talked about the potential of having pilot projects and use cases generation. So without disclosing much on what's in the strategy, because you'll all have a chance to see that in a couple of weeks' time, I would just want to reinforce that if you're a private company or you're an end user organization or have access to them and you've got a challenge or problem that you think can be solved through Earth observation and especially using the EA, you can get in touch with us because we're going to be looking at developing some of those use cases with you in the coming month. So you can either get in touch with me or use the email there on the website, dea@frontiersi.com.au. And I think that's it, unless if there are any questions in the chat, and I'm happy to answer those.
Thanks, Eva. So as Eva suggested, if you've got any questions, if you just want to put them in the chat window, that would be great. Thanks. Now, the next presentation is by Jonathan Ross. And oops, sorry. Jonathan's going to have put his, are you there, Jono?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to unshare my screen so you can share yours.
Yep, no problem. Let me just see if we have the technology, shall we?
That would be good.
Actually, I'll just share it in a second. I'm primarily, I guess we're going to use most of the time to talk about the Geo-Ministerial Summit that Australia is hosting later this year. But I did just want to touch on one broader international cooperation topic, just to keep everyone in the loop. So GA and the Space Agency, we're in discussion, reasonably early discussion, I think it's fair to say, with the United States and the European Union on what involvement Australia might be able to have in future Landsat and or Sentinel missions. As some on the call are probably aware, both the European Union and the United States are currently undertaking variously named studies on what key future missions, such as the post-Landsat 9 missions and a range of new Sentinel missions, including thermal and hyperspectral, might look like. So although it's very early days, the thinking is that there may be an opportunity to leverage and develop Australian industry capabilities to make a concrete contribution to one or both of these programs. That's good, gets Australia more concretely involved in the game in the constellations that we really depend on for our services. It helps reduce some of our sovereign risk, but of course the advantage there for the US and EU would be if we were co-investing in those programs, they would be able to do more by leveraging that investment. That might enable them to include additional capabilities or sensors or whatever that we might have a particular interest in. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's very early days, but it's something I think it's worth the community being aware of, because if it does start to evolve into something, we'd need to make sure that the community is on board with that, because it wouldn't be cheap, and it's something that we would need to go to government about for the funding, and it'd need to be clear that there was community support for that. So we'll give more updates on that. I suspect at future workshops. So I might switch to
Okay, I'll just unshare again.
Yeah, you unshare. All right, I'm going to try this. Sorry. Where are we? It's too technical for me. Isn't that sad? Share screen. Is that up?
It's getting there. Yes, it is.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everybody. So from the 4th to the 9th of November this year, the Australian government will host the 2019 Ministerial Summit and all the associated events that go with that of the Intergovernmental Group on Earth Observation. So that'll be held in Canberra. That brings together ministers and representatives from 105 governments, 127 international organisations, from the commercial sector, from not-for-profits and so on, to talk about how we can cooperate together globally to exploit Earth observation data. And so GEO is not just about satellite data, it's about all Earth observation data. So drones, ships, in situ, whatever it might be. So this is going to be a really big event. It'll have, we suspect, 1,000 people from around the world turning up to this. And we want to make sure that it's Australia hosting this, not GA, not the Australian government. We want to make sure that this is something that provides a platform to help the broader Earth observation community promote its capabilities and find new partnerships with people who they may not normally get a chance to engage with, but they'll be out here for the Geo Week Summit. So just a few, so they're the countries who are members. There are 105 of them. One of the gaps you might notice on that map is the South Pacific. There are no South Pacific islands who are members of GEO. That is something that Australia as the host country is hoping to address. One of the things we'll be putting a particular effort into is facilitating a discussion between the broader GEO community and the South Pacific to come up with a win-win way of them joining the global community. One of the unique things about GEO is the members of the 105 governments, but it also has these participating organisations who participate generally equally, and that's a very broad group, from UN agencies to the Belmont Forum to European Space Agency to philanthropic agencies. It's a really unique grouping where often you see these international bodies like at the UN where a lot of these voices don't get heard. It's the countries who are doing all the speaking, but GEO is a bit unique in that it's a much more open and flexible framework for cooperation. So we think that that's a good thing. That means that people who are engaging with it don't just come and meet bureaucrats, they get to meet a whole range of other people as well. So the three key global priorities that GEO is working towards are the big three global policy agendas that were signed up in 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and the Paris Climate Accord. So what you've got is all of these different stakeholders coming together to work out how can we share, apply, exploit Earth observation data in support of the policy agendas that pretty much every country in the world has agreed to through the United Nations. I won't drill too much on this, but GEO has had some good successes. In fact, quite a few of them that Australians have been involved in, actually, including one particular one, which is about food security called GeoGlam. And this has been a really interesting project here about saying, how can we use Earth observation to understand how the crops are growing in different areas around the world, feed that into the big policy discussions and the big discussions in the World Food Programme and so on. What are we going to do to get ahead of the game to make sure that people don't starve? Because, wow, we didn't see that crop failure in Uganda happening when with a bit of preparation, we could have dealt with that because things were going better somewhere else in the world. But there's a whole bunch of examples of these. There's a really nice document on the GEO website, a highlights document about it. And I'd suggest that might be something people might want to have a look at when they're thinking about how they might want to engage with this summit. So this 2019 meeting in Canberra comes 4 years after the last ministerial summit. You can see Arnold Decker actually in that photo on the right there, if your eyesight's good. So at the last meeting, as I say, was in 4 years. The group only meets at ministerial level once every 4 years. This year we are quite excited to be hosting this year. In Mexico City, the focus was on a new kind of high-level strategy. 4 years on from that, the focus will be on what new projects, what new initiatives, what new data are we going to create to actually deliver that strategy. So this really is this will be a summit about action rather than about kind of high-level concepts and strategic discussions, and that we think that makes it a bit more relevant to the broader community. It really is about what are the practical things that governments, the private sector, NGOs, philanthropic organisations, development banks can invest in to keep this agenda moving. So we talked a bit there about these big, kind of policy agendas like the SDGs and so on, and they're all very, they're very important strategic frameworks. But the theme for the summit this year will be, we've got all these digital technologies out there that are obviously changing the world. Everyone's talking about big data. We've got one of the biggest sources of big data, Earth observation data. It basically tells us what the planet's up to and what's going to happen. And what we'll be aiming to do through this summit is highlight to ministers in the broader community that Earth observation isn't something that kind of sits out on the side as, you know, it's a sciencey thing of kind of academic interest. Every business decision, every economic planning decision, from, you know, big policy discussions that, you know, Treasury departments have all the way down to individual businesses, we need to get this big data fully integrated into the digital economy. And through that, obviously, that creates opportunities for businesses to create the products and services that take the Earth observation data and turn it into something useful. So, and our view is that these big policy agendas like sustainable development can only happen if this data is actually fully connected into the real economy, and it's not something sitting off to the side. There'll also be some kind of big policy questions ministers will be engaging with. One of them is this issue of geo and the bit of a mouthful here, but geo and the multilateral economic cooperation architecture. And essentially that is, we've got a big group of countries who get together to talk about EO, but it's not clear at this stage whether this is connecting into the discussions that groups like the G7, the G20, APEC, ASEAN, you know, when the kind of economic hardheads get together, we need to make sure that they're aware of the key role that Earth observation needs to have in things moving forward. And there are other really interesting topics like, what does the future of work mean for EO and for GEO? What about the rules that are being negotiated now around trade in digital services across borders? Obviously, a lot of the Earth observation data is global, and a company in Australia developing a product based on that wants to know what the rules of racing will be when they go to sell that overseas. So there are going to be some really interesting policy discussions. But one of the things we're really trying to do as this country this year is engage industry and engage the commercial sector into the week. Kind of the core formal thing that happens at these events is a big plenary meetings where it's you know, bureaucrats and ministers and you know, chief executives of these organizations getting together and having quite a formal meeting. We are going to establish an industry track alongside that, where there's a whole range of events for businesses from Australia and overseas in the space, spatial, tech industries to get together and promote what they're doing and connect with each other. That industry track is going to be led, the organisation of that is being led by the Australian Space Agency and CSIRO, but that really is going to be a team effort in collaboration with the Spatial Business Industry Association, the SIAA, Frontier SI, and this group. You know, it'll be a global thing. We want businesses from all around the world, but as the host country, we want to make sure Australia's businesses and Australia's innovators are really put on show. All these people are going to be coming from around the world that we may not normally get a chance to highlight our capabilities to. Through this industry track, as the host, we want to make sure that Australian companies get that platform. You'll see here the logo, Earth Dreaming. One of the things that we'll also be looking to do is highlight the important role of Indigenous peoples and traditional knowledge in informing Earth observation. We think that's increasingly recognised now, not just in Australia, but overseas. And that's certainly a discussion that the GEO needs to have as well. And we're kind of highlighting the importance of that through the branding of the event with this logo that's been developed by an Indigenous artist in Canberra who was the ACT Australian of the Year in 2018, Dion DeVoe. But also, of course, we'll be promoting Canberra and Australia as a great place to come. It is a long way for some of these people to travel. And one of the things we'll be highlighting is there's a lot of good stuff in Canberra they can do in addition to the summit, but they should think about how they can use Canberra as a jumping off point to the rest of Australia to go out and see what's happening in Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, WA, everywhere. So we'll be encouraging them to look at, if they're coming all this way, what are some of the other things they can go and do when they're out there. So one last thing, as I say, this really is a team effort. In terms of the people who have to do the grunt work to organise it, that there's a task force located within Geoscience Australia. And we're very lucky to have people from GA, from CSIRO, from the Space Agency, and from the Department of Industry helping us to deliver this event. And I suspect we'll be talking to you more during the year, in particular about this industry track and these opportunities for the broader Australian EO community to get engaged in this. I might leave it at that if I can. I'm sorry, I think I took up a bit more time than I was allowed, but wanted to start the discussion with you guys.
Great, thanks very much, Jono. I'll just reshare my screen. Great. Okay. So next we have a presentation by Kim Clayfield about the CSIRO Earth observation activities. Kim, are you able to unmute yourself and contribute? Kim, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. We can now.
Okay, sorry, it was not only my phone muted, but also the system. So first of all, Alex Held sends his apologies. He usually gives these updates, but he's at the Avalon Air Show this week, meeting with DLR and Kineis and aerospace companies and lots of others, as I suspect many people from your organisations are too. So the first thing that I wanted to mention today is around our Space Technology Future Science platform, which was launched in November of last year. It's an internal program which CSIRO is investing $16 million in to develop new cutting-edge space capabilities within CSIRO, specifically in support of the Space Agency's goal of tripling the size of the Australian space industry by 2030. So we have just finished deciding which projects are going to receive funding under the first round of this program. They're short projects that are just running until June of this year. We have commenced 11 projects, and of those, 7 are focused on Earth observation. That includes technologies, data analytics, and also applications. I've been asked to mention one of those projects specifically. One of them is looking at the potential market for Australian-developed high-quality hyperspectral satellite images. Part of that project is going to involve translating the requirements and the needs of the Australian Earth observation community into engineering specifications for hyperspectral images. And that, of course, is going to involve consultations with groups like Earth Observation Australia and others. And the project proponents just wanted to flag that they're expecting to hold a workshop around mid-year to facilitate this consultation. So more details about that will be announced in due course. But Stephen Gensmer and Adam McLeod are the key contacts in CSIRO for that project. Potentially Adam is online, so if there are some questions at the end, he might be able to answer them. But otherwise, if that's something that you're interested in contributing to, please just keep an ear out for that and we'll keep you updated. So round 2 of the Space FSP is anticipated to open in early March and run through till late April. And this time, projects are able to be proposed for up to 3 years in duration. And external collaboration is strongly encouraged with these projects. We can't use the FSP funds to transfer to external organisations, but we can co-invest on joint projects. So if you have any ideas or you're interested in that, you're welcome to contact me directly. I'm currently the interim leader of the Space Technology FSP, or you can approach CSIRO scientists who you know you might like to work with directly and discuss potential proposals with them. So moving on to the other activities going on within our Centre for Earth Observation at the moment. Novasar 1 is entering the final stages of commissioning, with the start of service currently set for the end of March. We're going to obviously operate that as a national facility, so users will be able to request when and where imagery is required by submitting proposals using our online Opal system. We're actually just shortly closing an initial proposal round within CSIRO, which we're going to use for end-to-end testing of the Novasar One proposal and assessment system. And we expect that public proposals will be accepted in line with the scheduling for the end of commissioning at the end of March. So please also keep an eye out for that. Work is going well with our CubeSat, CSIRO 1. We are just commencing the detailed design phase there. And of course, we continue our work with CS and GEO. At the end of January, Alex Held attended the CEOS GEO coordination meeting in Geneva. He also attended the CNES Space Climate Observatory meeting in Paris. The infrared and visible optical sensors sub-working group of the CEOS working group on Calval, which is chaired by Cindy Ong from CSIRO, is holding its plenary meeting in Perth in March. And also Alex Held, Flora Kerblat and Cindy Ong will be attending the CEOS Strategic Implementation Team meeting in the US on the 1st of April. And of course, we continue to work closely with GA on planning the GEO ministerial meeting being held in November. And the very last point I had on my list was that CSIRO's Amazon Data Cube is launching. And that is all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. So there's a few presentations by Stuart. Stuart Finn. Stuart, are you online?
Yeah, I'm online. Can you hear me all right, Sylvia?
Yes, thanks. A bit quiet, but not bad.
Sure. I'll try and speak up.
That's better.
And apologies for background noise. I'll be brief because I'm just at the airport. Quick update on collaborative research infrastructure. So Australia's National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Program, we've got 3 facilities that have Earth observation within them: the Marine Observing System, TERN, the terrestrial one, and then AusScope. TERN's focusing a lot more on product development at the moment in terms of new national products. So Alex Held's leading that activity at the moment, and I know they've just had an annual meeting to figure out new directions, which hopefully we'll hear soon. IMOS, the Marine Observing System, has also just had their national planning meetings. They're increasing the scope of their satellite remote sensing facility. Currently it's looking at ocean surface colour and sea surface temperature, but we'll also move to including more products on ocean surface altimetry, wave height, and other products. I don't have an update from AusScope. The final item for collaborative research infrastructure is there's renewed activity thanks to some push from CSIRO for establishing a national calibration and validation infrastructure capability, and that'll build on work that a lot of people on this call did 2 years ago to put in an NCRIS proposal on a Calval facility, and follow-up work that Tim Malthus and Cindy Ong drove with myself to try and get that going. So hopefully we'll hear a lot more about that over the next couple of months, but that's all I've got for infrastructure. Thanks, Sylvia.
Thanks, Stuart. There's a section here for the SSI update. Is there someone from SSI who could speak up to that? Peter Kinney or Petra Holmholz? No? Okay, we'll just move on then. And also Deanna Hutchinson. Deanna, are you there for a SEBA update?
Sylvia, it's Stuart.
Yep.
I've got Deanna's an apology. She couldn't make the meeting at the last minute. So I've got some notes which I'll read out if that's all right.
That's great. Thank you very much, Stuart.
Okay, I'm just going to switch screens. Hang on. Okay. Okay. All right, so can you still hear me all right, Sylvia?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. All right, so this is an update from Deanna Hutchinson, who's the Director for SEBA, the Spatial Information and Business Association of Australia. CEBA's looking forward to working over the next year with the Australian Space Agency as well as Earth Observation Australia on developing the agency's industry track, but also helping a number of other people like Jonathan Ross, who hopefully we'll hear from soon, and Joe Andrews about the Geo-Ministerial Summit, which is being hosted in Canberra later this year. CEBA's just released a draft report on spatial futures and sector roles, which they finished, sorry, but hasn't been released publicly yet. Sorry, I just apologise for background noise. CEBA's also been working with 2026 growth sectors, particularly ITS in Australia. These are the companies METS Ignited, Enzen and AIHW. And also a partner at the ITS World Summit. Steve also been active in the 2026 Agenda Leadership Group, which a number of you know about. This is the spatial or geospatial national planning group, which also has a 10-year plan like Earth Observation Australia's. And Steve has been working closely on spatial data needs, specifically in relation to sustainable development goals. Other key contributions from CEBA recently is helping out with a French space delegation visit to Australia, seeking engagement, and also helping to lead national diversity initiatives, which hopefully we'll hear more about as well. So we'll leave it at there, Sylvia, and hand back to you.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Are you able then to also give us a presentation on the National Earth Observation Analytics Hub?
Okay, so there's no presentation on that at the moment, just to update everyone on where we're going in that space. So there's two activities there. The first one is an analytics hub proposal, which a number of people in Queensland and the Queensland government have been working on last year to help build a sort of co-funded centre for building analytics applications. At the moment, parts of that hub were put into the SmartSat CRC proposal, which I'll get to at the moment, and other parts of the proposal were put into activities that CSIRO is developing around, I guess, national collaborative spaces to build space industry. And where it's going at the moment is it looks like there may be a focus on Earth observation analytics for CSIRO's activities in Brisbane. There's been a number of discussions with state government about that, and hopefully we'll push that further. The SmartSat CRC was one of 6 which was shortlisted in November to go into the final round for the next round of funding. Interviews for those CRCs were held at the beginning of February, and we'll be told in the middle of March if that goes ahead. That CRC has 3 programs. The first 2 are on satellite development. The third is specifically on Earth observation analytics development, and that's addressing things like designing new satellites, small sat constellations for Australia, which are built specifically for Australian conditions and applications, and deal with onboard processing potentially and other activities. So if that does go ahead, it'll be a 6-year program with a large number of industry partners and a number of people who are in universities on this call partners in that at the moment. So I think those are sort of all the main updates on this at the moment. The only other item of interest is the Queensland Parliamentary Inquiry into jobs in the space industry is going to be released this afternoon. There'll be a press conference, and I know Alyssa Starkey from Ausius will be representing Earth observation applications at that press conference. That should be an interesting report because it'll set the direction for Queensland investing in space over the next couple of years. So I'll stop there. Thanks, Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Stuart. I understand that Joe Andrews might be online. Joe, are you able to give us a bit of an update on the Australian Space Agency?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Joe.
Hi, yeah, and apologies for the technical issues to start with. I'll just keep this brief. The agency's doing its best to get out there and engage with all our different stakeholders, both domestically and internationally. As a brief recap, a couple of weeks ago we signed another MOU with the United Arab Emirates Space Agency, just looking for opportunities that we can collaborate with them in space activities. We've also signed some statements of strategic intent with Lockheed Martin and Gunhuli Space. If you're not familiar with them, they operate a large communications facility over in the UK. We're also working with the states and territories to sign MOUs on how we can cooperate and go forward. All the states are very keen to work out where the opportunities are and how we can exploit them, so that's really encouraging. Of course, we're part of government, so we've been going through our first run through Senate estimates, and we've also had the opportunity to talk to a House of Reps Standing Committee on Space, and I think that was all very positive, that people like the direction we're going. If anything, they just want us to go faster. Internationally, we've been at the UN COPUA Scientific and Technical Committee over the last 2 weeks, and that's really looking at, sort of, to put it simply, the rules of the road for space and how we can work together with our international partners. Coming up, well, also at the moment, we have a large presence down at the Avalon Air Show with an Australian booth there as well. And by all reports, that's getting quite a lot of traffic, so that's really encouraging to hear. Down the track, we're looking at having an Australian booth at the Space Symposium in Colorado Springs. This is a sort of the peak international event within the US, and it's a great opportunity for us to reach out to other space agencies and also the large multinationals doing work in space as well. So I guess through all of this, we're really aiming to get the space agency out there, engaging with international partners. I guess I could say that you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with all the documents we're signing, but below that we're doing a lot of engagement and looking for opportunities for collaboration with international partners and to get stuff going domestically. And it's been great listening to this call because I can see a lot of the work happening within the EO community. But yeah, that's probably enough for me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Joe. Much appreciated. So thank you to all of our presenters and our attendees. Our next meeting is scheduled for April. But before we close the meeting, could I please remind you to complete the survey if you have time so that we can improve this webinar series. And finally, a reminder that the meeting and chats and voice presentations will be available on the Earth Observation website. So thank you all very much again, and I'll close the meeting. See ya.